Legend has it that you and Kraskinski during lunch used to have epic Madden battles.
Every day. My memory of our epic battles when we could choose who we wanted was he was the Patriots, and weirdly, I was the Chargers. No one could stop my Gates play. I would scream to him as I was throwing Rivers to Gates. Gates play! Seam. He would take that seam right down the middle, and I would loft it over, touchdown every time.
So without further ado, Brian Baumgartner. I feel like we're friends now. I went on his podcast. We really hit it off, and then we missed each other in Vegas. Brian, we were catching up. You were at the Gronk beach party. How was Vegas?
I was. I mean, I felt like you were avoiding me a little bit. I mean, we had big plans. We were going to hang out.
Yeah.
I ended up seeing your producers and not you. It was really weird deal. Yeah. I felt like you were avoiding me. Gronk Beach in Vegas. Well,
how was that?
Who would want to be anywhere else?
Yeah, how was it?
It was entertaining. I tell you, it was entertaining. I don't even know what supposed to go to these things means, but like there are some things I feel like I'm supposed to go to, I'm supposed to show up for. And I went thinking I was going to leave. Well, first off, I walked in right behind Gronk and his brothers.
Yes.
Which oddly, I had done that one other time before, which was on an ESPY's red carpet. I had showed up right behind the Gronk clan. This goes back a few years. And they started doing the wheelbarrow on the red carpet, like grabbing each other's legs and letting them wheelbarrow down. And I was like, well, clearly I'm out of place here.
They're big, strong boys. They're big, strong boys, those Gronk boys.
Very strong and exceedingly energetic, the Gronk boys. Yes. I think he and Kelsey are attempting to not only prove who's the greatest tight end of all time, but who has the most energy and can party the hardest. Yes. I feel like that competition is going on at the same time.
Well, I think Jason wins that competition. I know he's not in the competition because we're just talking tight ends, but do you see how drunk clearly Travis is at these parades? I got to tell you, Jason Kelsey would have blown like a 2.0. Like he would have blown a GPA at our fucking at our parade, but he delivered that speech with eloquence. Yeah. So I think he wins the contest.
He claims he had 25 beers and was 5 out of 10 drunk.
I do not doubt that either. I do not doubt that. I don't doubt that. Those Ohio boys, man.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you about one place where they're really good at drinking, Green Bay, Wisconsin. You're a Packers fan. We talked a little bit about this on your podcast, which is wonderful, and I can't wait to circle back to that whole thread on jobs and what you did before you made it. But I wonder how you feel about the old Brian Baumgartner, as you remember lamenting the draft pick of Jordan Love as you're up 9-10 points in the second half against the 49ers this year.
Well, look, wow. You know, I haven't had to answer these tough questions until I
Rich
come
Eisen
on with you, Chris. Yeah. I thought we were friends. I get on Good Morning Football. They don't ask me these questions anymore. Now here you come, just boom, hard hitting. Look, I will say what I said. I will not stand down from the comments that I made, which was that the situation was just handled really poorly. And look, I think that there was a time where not only were they looking for this transition, but the leadership of the Packers believed that this transition was going to happen much earlier. Aaron's numbers for a couple of years had dipped, and there were questions as to why that had happened. And they drafted Jordan, and they didn't communicate, and they were in the NFC Championship game knowing that they needed playmakers to take that next step. It was very clear that year, or the year before the draft, and instead of taking a playmaker, they traded up to take Jordan Love without communicating with Mr. Rogers. I still feel like that was a bad decision. Now, I think further, based on the Packers' own comments before the start of this year, I think that they were not sure what they had.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So the fact that I didn't know when I know a 100th of what the guys who are there know, so I can't really apologize for that. But I mean, look, he's looked great, and you know what I was talking about too in the playoffs. He looks and sounds like Aaron now.
Yeah, he does.
Like, it's a bizarre. I mean, even that like Green 18, Green 19. Like, it's like, oh my God, who's behind center right now? Like, what is going on? Yep. Some of the plays that he makes also looks like him. Some of those back foot throws look like him. And look, that makes sense. I mean, I understand there's a lot of reasons that people need to play their quarterbacks that they draft early. But I mean, you look at the Green Bay Packers and what's happened, and you hear all the stuff, particularly out of Chicago, like, man, now it's three guys in a row who are going to kick our ass for the next, 20 years or whatever. I can't believe they get so lucky. And it's like, well, guys, they did have both Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love sitting and watching and learning for a few years.
Yeah.
And these other organizations have gotten into a place where they believe they've got to draft and play the guy right away, or the general manager is going to get fired, or, the coach is going to be fired. So we got to play these guys right away. They're not ready. And by the way, if they're drafting high in the first round, their team was shitty to begin with. So they probably don't have a strong offensive line. They probably don't have pieces in place. And so it's just a recipe for disaster. And so you get to a situation, and I by the way, I have no comment on this. I have no idea, where you get 3-4 years in and you're like, can Justin Fields play? Well,
right. Like, what do you want the Bears to do, looking at them as rivals?
Yeah, well, yeah, but what do you know? And I just said, how do you know when they've been lacking so many pieces? I don't know. It's just, granted, the Packers have had someone who could start when they've drafted these other guys. That's been fortuitous, so they didn't feel like they had nobody and they had to play these guys. But it's still, I'm telling you, it does go to, like, if you looking at a team culture-wise, sort of globally, or by the decade as opposed to by the year, they seem to be getting that. They seem to be getting that right.
No, they are. And, two things can be true at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive, that we could all sit there and scratch our heads looking back at it. Because I was one of those people that was like, what are we doing? They're just poking the bear. Like, Aaron's had it. And this is like the last straw. And you could not do that communicatively, and that can be a big problem. But it can also eventually be the right move, even if for the better part of the last 3-4 years you had no fucking clue how good the guy was. Because I think the jury was out as late as mid-season. I can remember you guys playing Minnesota this year. Yeah. And the offense that you ran in that game, to me, at Green Bay, was like a preseason offense. It was like, we're not even trying to see what this kid has. And I think they reached a point last year where they were like, we have to figure this out. Oh. And the minute they flipped the switch and were like, let's loosen the reins, I don't know what happened internally, he looked like a franchise quarterback to me. And I'm not going to move off that spot. I know it's a small sample size, but I really like the guy.
Well, look, to echo your point, and geez, I think this was later. I think this was November. We have to look it up. I think maybe the first week of November. I actually was in Vegas live for the Packers game at the Raiders and had remarkable seats. It's kind of the first time in a long time where I feel like I was in a stadium in seats where I could actually see things better than on television.
Yeah,
right?
it's a great stadium.
Like it's intimate. I was like, and this is not like a humble brag thing. I just got lucky. I was sitting right about the 50, kind of up. So it was almost like my view was like the television, where I could see everything side to side, but also I could see more than the television allows me to see. Mm-hmm. Like I could see, running back running out on the wheel route or whatever. That's just an example. And I was seeing they looked horrible. They were terrible. And there wasn't even like, I was like, he's right there.
Yeah.
Jordan. Like it felt like he couldn't see the field. He wasn't making the right decisions.
Yeah.
He was forcing to his first option. There was like all of these things. And then something happened between then and I don't know. It may have just been like 2 weeks later. But the Thanksgiving Day game.
Oh, it was incredible.
Was unbelievable.
Nobody kicked the Lions' ass like they kicked the Lions' ass that day. Nobody all year. Well, the Ravens in Baltimore, but nobody. And it was such an intimate opponent. It kind of signaled to me like, okay, you don't have this division on lock the way you might have thought you did. So, like Lions fans, they've got a lot of enjoyment over the last 2 seasons. Very much hopeful. Very much like, oh, this could be ours. Aaron Rodgers is gone. Right. It's like, well, behind door number 2 is this kid that just kicked your ass on Thanksgiving. And I feel like from a team building standpoint, they have what it takes to stay in it. But you got a Georgia Q-zip on. I don't want to be.
do.
Yeah. So football life is pretty good for you right now, I'm assuming. You are from the Atlanta area, and this confirms what was going to be my next question. How into Georgia are you?
So it's a weird one for me because I went to school at SMU. Hail to the red and the blue, the Mustangs of SMU, just joining the ACC. Which is
November.
November. Yeah.
They'll be here in November.
They'll be here. Come on, come to
Where?
Scott Stadium.
SMU at Virginia.
Come on, road trip, man.
That's right. They are playing at Virginia. Wahoo Wah, the dumbest cheer in the history of
okay, Southern
sports.
Millionaires University. You're the only school that might be more pretentious than UVA.
By the way, do you know that the ours is Deadman College? This goes. I can't even believe I remember this. The dome, like the center main building at SMU, modeled after yours.
No way.
That
They
is
have a
true.
rotunda.
The rotunda. What do you call it there? Rotunda?
Well, it's that
The
Greek
rotunda.
Revival architecture with the big columns. And the problem with Greek Revival is it looks very good old, but when people do it now, to me, it looks like shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't know what year you guys put that dome up. I'm sure there was plenty of funding.
There was plenty of funding. We did it.
How rich are kids at SMU? Like, is it what they
style.
say? Is it just like people just burning through money, driving Ferraris to class? Like, what is it?
I didn't.
I know you didn't.
I didn't.
Well, I don't know that for sure.
Well, I didn't.
You
I'll
don't
just
strike
tell you
me
that.
as that kind of guy.
No, I didn't do that. But no, they so as you have mentioned in a negative way, they have a lot of money. But what that means is they have as a big positive, and for me, and the reason I went there, they had a lot of money that they used to support the arts. So they ran their arts program like Alabama runs their athletic department. They recruit people in, theater, dance, all of the, sort of performing arts. They take it and the visual arts, as I understand. So that's why I went there. But growing up, like my 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old self, and continuing, I grew up, born, raised in the Atlanta area. I would spend weekends in Athens for the University of Georgia football games. And that was my first true sports love. Now, probably because the Braves were terrible, the Falcons were worse than terrible. The Hawks, they had a little run with Dominique Wilkins there, but they could never beat Boston, then MJ. But Georgia was good. I mean, this is like Herschel Walker days.
So you just missed Pony Express?
So
at SMU?
No, I'm not that.
I just wanted to make sure. By how many years?
Old.
By 8 to 10 years?
That old. I am not. No, so
You're talking
the
about
Pony
Herschel
Express
Walker.
had happened. The Pony Express had happened. I was probably, and I went back, and I couldn't ever specifically remember. I was probably rooting against SMU then, when because that was early '80s, when Eric Dickerson and Craig James and all those guys were at SMU, so they were probably up there in the top 5. I think they were in the top 5 like the year Georgia didn't win with Herschel, maybe junior year or something. Anyway, but that was my first love, and I had lost contact with the University of Georgia, like the athletic department. I didn't know anybody there. I had moved, obviously, long way away. I had gone back for a game, just sort of randomly at some point, wanted to take somebody to an SEC football game, and but then Josh Brooks, their newish athletic director, somebody in the athletic department, when he got the job, and he had been there for a while, he got the job to be the athletic director. They sent me a message and asked me to. He is a big fan of The Office, and he asked me to. They asked me to send him a congratulatory message from me to him getting the job. So I looked at, I was like, oh, this is fun, and I, did the whole Go Dogs thing and got all excited, and I don't know. I guess I was in a good mood that day. Anyway, Josh releases it, and it goes like viral. The fact that I send this message goes viral, and then he somehow gets a hold of me and says, anytime you want to come, anywhere, anytime, you're my guest. And so I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. And so I've been sort of back now into the program. I've gone to at least a game or two the last couple of years, and it's been really fun.
That reminds me of when we went down to Tuscaloosa, Kevin. Yeah. My first love was Virginia, but the first time I really felt that atmosphere was this past fall. We took a road trip down to Tuscaloosa to watch them play LSU, and we got a Bama flag in studio. The SEC football is just a little different. It's just like the whole atmosphere. Different. Yeah, and so what we're trying to do now is plan a couple trips in the fall that we're going to take. So, like, have you been to other college towns in the SEC? I hear Athens is like number 1, or Oxford is up there. Yeah. Tuscaloosa is obviously in a league of its own. It's beautiful.
Tuscaloosa, it's not as good as Athens. Let's be clear about that. Though there are a couple of away games that are very intriguing this year. I mean, if we did not have a 12-team playoff in college football this year, man, I don't even know what would happen. I mean, Georgia has to go to Tuscaloosa, and
we'll be there
to Austin for Texas joining the SEC.
Now that
so you let me know. I will meet you there.
We're going to scout Austin out. We're going to South by Southwest in a week to do some stuff out there. So we're going to scout out Austin, and we'll look at maybe week 5, Georgia, Bama, but also possibly Austin. Brian, do you gamble in real life? Because obviously Kevin Malone was a big gambler, and for people to find out that you're actually a huge sports fan, like the second question for me is, are you also a degenerate gambler like the people on this set?
I like to make a wager every now and then.
Talk to us about the kinds of wagers you like, Brian. What's your drink of choice?
Well, look, let's just be very, very. I was in Vegas. Now, partly I was in Vegas. Partly it was the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Partly it was I had no dog in the fight there with the Chiefs and the Niners. Because of recent-ish, decade-long history with the Niners and my Packers, let's just say I am not a Niners fan.
I hear that.
But I was a big Chiefs fan on Super Bowl Sunday. Let's just put it that way.
So were we, buddy.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So were
Thank
we.
you.
We had a
Thank
great
you.
day, didn't we? Had a great week.
Great day.
It was great. And there were people saying, hey, Mahomes is not the same with this team. We had to just block out the noise and make the smart play. You know, if they give you a couple points with Mahomes, you take it.
If anyone gives you 10,001 odds, you take it.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
that's great.
So this is this is actually not a humble brag. This is a full-on brag. I think, so there's 6 games, 4 games, 2 games, 12, and then the Super Bowl, right? So 13 playoff games.
Yeah.
Prior to the Super Bowl. This is true. I know a lot of people brag, whatever, and I don't care if you believe me or not. I'm just telling you it's true.
I might believe you because it might have happened to me too, Brad.
I had gone against the spread the first 12 games, 9-3, if I'm counting the games right. I had 3 losses. 2 of them were Mahomes against Buffalo.
Okay.
I bet Buffalo.
Yeah.
And Mahomes against the Ravens. I bet the Ravens.
See.
And I was not going to do a three-peat
yes.
on that. I was just like, okay, I'm done. I believe. Like, whatever. The regular season apparently doesn't matter. I don't care. But I'll tell you what got me nervous in Vegas, like doing the Radio Row deal and
the first half of the game. I thought we were going to lose the first half of the game. I was like, oh shit, everybody's right.
Well, yeah. Well, no, doing the Radio Row, my experience was everyone was picking the Chiefs, and the number wasn't changing, and they were still an underdog. And I was like, Vegas is smarter than me. Vegas, they know they're gonna rake this. But no, it was a good day.
They took a bath the week before. The Vegas don't quit. They're just going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So I guess the interesting question, because I just mentioned Kevin as a character, but like there's so much more to you than Kevin. But I feel like everybody just knows Kevin because it's such an iconic show, and you were such a big part of it. And like we grew up with you. It wasn't like we were kids, but in your 20s and when you're like matriculating into the real world, The Office is very. These were formative
we were in college
years for us as adults.
Right.
So, I wonder, you got a whole generation of people who probably come up and they're like, hey, Kevin, is that a pet peeve, or do you enjoy, being a part of something like that? Because I know it's easy for me to say, hey, it's great. Like, yeah, people know you as Kevin Malone, but like there's a lot more that you're interested in and have done. Does that ever bother you?
Well, so, I mean, this is sort of a long answer, but I think to your first point about like growing up with me, I think that sometimes television is like sports in a way. And I've gotten to know, so like I was a big Braves guy, and when Smoltz and Maddox and Glavine were there, and I was rooting for them. But I was in high school at the time, right? Well, now I've gotten to know them through golf. And I realized, like, they were, they had lives and were on television every day or whatever, and larger than life to me. They're like kind of my age, you know what I mean? Right. So when you're like watching sports sometimes, and you think of and especially now, like college guys, you're like, oh God, like you have to remind yourself, like they're like 17.
Yeah, I'm
like,
a fan of a person that was like a baby a couple years back.
Right.
It's a fucking weird thing.
So here's the thing about The Office. It is, to me, the only show in the history of television, if you can think of another example, no one's been able to yet, that actually got bigger and more popular once it was done. Right? So, and I'm not talking about like a cult, weird kind of B movie that suddenly becomes like hot later on and becomes like a thing. We were winning Emmys, like, the Screen Actors Guild Award was last night. We won that stuff, and we were NBC's biggest show. But we were coming off of Friends, Seinfeld, and when we were on, we were not that. Like we just categorically weren't. The network didn't support us that way. We weren't, spoiler alert, I wasn't on Vogue, or like Cosmo every month or what. This wasn't what happened. So the show just got bigger once it was done with the streaming. It fit really well with streaming. And so, as a long way of answering your question, it's hard to blame people who, get excited about that or, call me Kevin or whatever. I mean, I have guys that I play golf with, like guys who are like, guys I play with once a week, whatever. And, I'll be on hole 12 and hit a good shot. The guy will say, like, good shot, Kev.
I like fucked it up.
And it's like, and just like, because they call me, in their brain, somewhere there, like Kevin still exists. And I don't complain or, I usually don't say anything. They'll realize it or someone will go, dude, you just called him Kevin. What are you doing? And then like a hole later, they'll be like, hey, Brian, keep calling me Brian. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care.
Well, yeah.
George Takei's been going to Star Trek conventions for 50 years making bank. Like, there are worse things than to be known for the greatest TV show in history.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But like, when this is released, are you going to go and look to see if we've said interview with Brian Baumgartner or interview with Kevin from The Office? Does that bother
Brian,
you?
by the way.
My guess is you will do a combination of both to make sure people get it.
Yeah.
I think because of some of the stuff I've been doing the last few years, it's much more Brian now than it used to be, but it's weird. I have this conversation all the time. I don't know if this will make sense. This might be too like meta or something.
Dude. We are meta.
But
Meta guys.
like what'll happen is in situations like what you're talking about, and I'll exaggerate it, will be like the guy who spilled the chili, Kevin Malone from The Office, which they'll do this whole thing, and then I'll appear or whatever. But what I always tell people, and this is especially when I tell people like in the branding world and in the the products world, whatever, is like, guys, they either know or they don't know. So like explaining it for 30 minutes, like giving these little like insider like, oh, he spilled the chili and liked to gamble. And it's like, well, they either know who I am at this point or they don't. And so those little references don't do any good. So that's the one thing where I do get like, come on, guys. Like, let's be smart about this.
Well, we're not going to do that. But there are questions that we want to ask. The first one would be, because we're talking about sports, is it legit that you guys have a fantasy football league that's lasted, I don't know how long, I heard 19 years?
100%. It's 18 or 19 years. I mean, I would have to get the stats for you, but no, that's legit. We started it, so it wouldn't have been year one. So it would have been like year two.
Too much going on.
I'm gonna say, like, if you want to do the math, so we've been doing it since I would say 2004. So what? That's
it's about 20 years.
19 then. I think we just finished 19. It used to take us like a week to 10 days to draft. Untraditional.
That is not very.
We had a yellow, like, because we were on a set of The Office, a yellow legal pad, that flips up with the pages, and that would be that right there, that thing, that would be passed from desk to desk. So, like, I've never gone back to some of those early seasons and stuff to see if I could ever see that on somebody's desk, like mine. And so they would pass it around, and but maybe you were literally shooting a scene at that moment, or it was lunch, or it was your turn, but you, for whatever reason, got to go home early that day. So it would take us like a week to 10 days to draft. There was no time limit.
No auto drafting.
No.
No, like ESPN database to like check on what Jericho Cotchery's up to.
Well, like but that was the thing. It was like once it was your turn, you could be like, okay, guys, I'm just working on this little thing. And then you would just look at every player that's out there. You would have, an hour to decide who you were gonna pick. And then I'll tell you this: I haven't talked about this too much. This was maybe only a year or two. The computers, they worked on the set, and at least 1 or 2 years, once the draft became like you could draft, we would sit at the desks, like after we were filming, at night or whatever, and we would do the draft there.
Oh, that's so great. What's the punishment? Have you guys ever had a real punishment?
Never,
because we have a league. That's crazy. That's what it's all about.
I know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. And I guess maybe this like dates me age-wise or something. I don't know if that was a big thing back then when we started it.
But what about for year 20? You guys got to do something.
Well,
we had a guy on a billboard for like 7 months who lost. I set up one of those like legal ambulance chaser billboards, and it was like, if you want fantasy football advice, don't call Michael Lewis, 188-LOSE. And it was by the airport, and I forgot the motherfucker was up. So it stayed for a year. We've had guys die in their tips. I think we posed this year that we wear you got to wear the new Trump shoes for like a couple months if you lose.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of really dicey punishments that we've rolled out, and I just wonder if for year 20 you might. Who's actually good in your league?
Well, so I think the reason, I think why they end up dying is because, you know, you got people who are not into it. We are. It's a serious thing. Yes. Like everybody takes it seriously. But back to the like no punishment thing, I will say this too. I don't think we have changed what the ante is in 19 years. So it's
great.
also sort of embarrassingly small at this point.
$20.
It's a little more than that, but it's not, you know, it's not like we haven't grown with inflation. It's just sort of stayed the same.
It's not like the salary cap in the NFL.
Yeah. But people take it very seriously. There are a lot of texts. We do now, because now we've got guys who live everywhere. I mean, I don't live in Los Angeles anymore. So, but we have the like Zoom happening at the same time that the draft is happening, so we can kind of, you know, talk shit with each other, and it's good. I will tell you this before you ask, because I think we looked up this stat because we talked about it on my podcast. I think this was last year. I have been to the quote unquote Super Bowl of our fantasy league more than anyone else. I've never won.
Wow.
No way, dude.
Buffalo Bills.
That was
never won. Actually,
that was me for a while.
That's why. And I it's hard to talk about because I understand what was happening was more my year to win was not this year but last year, and the Bills Bengals game that got
everybody got
early.
it was crazy. It was like, oh, I feel terrible about the sport of football, and nothing happened in my fantasy league.
Yeah.
Brian, Chris is the guy in our league who does not set his lineup, and though this looks a little better today, he drafted little-known Romeo Dobbs.
I've been drafting Romeo Dobbs for
before his
5
rookie
years.
season in about the 5th round.
Okay, but he keeps getting better and better. Next year, it's going to be right on time.
The bug that Chris has caught is Madden, and legend has it that you and Kraskinski during lunch used to have epic Madden battles
every day
in the mid-aughts.
No way.
Every day.
Okay, give me your styles of play.
Well, so now this is years ago now. You have to remember that. And now I feel like I buy it every year, and then I don't really have anyone to play. I don't know.
Dude, you got me. I am
going online and like finding a friend. That just seems so. I'm way too old for that.
He's
shit.
right here, dude. He's right here. I'm just telling you, dude. I hadn't had the game since college.
Okay.
I got it like a month ago, and I'm so impressed with it. Although there's glitches and bugs, it can't be perfect. It's a fucking great game. You can run RPOs. You can kind of like coach your team for emphasis before the
next
game.
year's is not out. So you played.
This
the
is right
23.
now. Yeah, this is 23 or 24. I always get it mixed up. It's like cars. I'm like, okay, well, it's 2024. But me and my brother Kyle play almost every night, but Kyle's like too fucking cool for school. So a lot of nights I'm sitting there waiting with my controller while he's playing Helldivers or some nerd game. And I'm like, dude, I want to play some Madden. So I got to get your gamer tag and we could set up a game.
Yeah, I mean,
You don't have the
that.
game.
I don't think I've ever done it, but no, we would
Let's do
play
it.
every single day at lunch, every day.
So
this was, so he's a Boston guy. So I would say that our like go-to, this is serious matchup was he would be the Patriots, and weirdly, I would be we're looking like, you know, what are they, late aughts. Right? So like the, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, right in there, and moving in. But my memory of our epic battles when we could choose who we wanted was he was the Patriots, and weirdly I was the Chargers.
Oh, wow.
No one could stop my Gates play. I would scream to him as I was throwing Rivers to Gates. Gates play! Seam. Just he would take that seam right down the middle, and I would loft it over, touchdown every time. But have you done this yet? This was like we were children. I can't believe I don't think I've ever said this. We would take our finger and hit the down arrow, and that it was random select who you were.
Oh yeah, we do random selection.
You do, yeah. So you hit the thing and it goes, and then you'd have to stop.
You end up with like the Cardinals or the Lions in 2008.
Yeah, but then we would, just like children, it would be like, oh, that's not fair. Let's do it again.
Kyle does that now.
Yeah, of course. It's course. It's like, I'm not playing the Panthers against the,
He did that
Niners.
last night. He had an 85 overall, and he was like, I don't like these matchups. All right, well, who's the who's out of the whole Office cast, who rooted for the shittiest team in real life?
Well, I mean, my least favorite team on the planet is the Seahawks, so I guess I could say Rain.
Rain. Yeah, he's a big
But
Seahawks
they had
fan,
a run,
huh?
obviously. What?
Yeah, they were our rivals. We went up there every year and got our asses kicked. And I was a follower of Rain on like Twitter, and I'd see him tweeting about the Seahawks, and I'd be like, oh, could you not?
Yeah.
Just fucking, yeah. I mean, they're the luckiest team in football.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
For that
Is
stretch
that-
there, and you guys were victims to that in the playoffs.
Are you kidding me? I still have nightmares about it.
Michael
Yeah,
Bennett riding
that
around
NFC
the field
NFC
on a
championship
bicycle.
game?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Let me just throw the ball as high as I can, and suddenly someone is there.
I'm telling you.
Let me do an onside kick in the last 2 minutes of a game that never works, and somehow it's recovered.
It's like video game stuff, for real. All right, so I want to talk to you about your podcast, Off the Beat, which I went on, which was awesome. It was really a good time. Obviously, you're a great conversationalist.
May I?
Yeah.
I listened to some. I listened because I'm a big prep guy, as you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear Brian's
Big prep guy.
podcasting
Big
chops.
prep guy. He went potty in the toilet
And I swear
doing
to you,
his work.
Brian was so well prepped himself, and it gave you room to answer questions unlike I've heard you answer.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was such a good interview.
It's a great pod, dude. And I just think
Thank
you're a good interviewer. And, again, I mean, just case in point, what else do you do besides your main gig? Like, you're also a great interviewer. You got a podcast. And I wonder who's your bucket list, like, kind of, if I could get this guy on, that would be amazing.
That's interesting. Well, so look, and this is not me trying to sell. I'm just going to tell you this is the truth. I mean, thank you for saying that, by the way. What I like to find out about, because I feel like it informs those moments. I mean, one of the like log line things I say is like, plenty of people are asking people about winning an Oscar or winning an Emmy
Yes.
or winning a Super Bowl or whatever. And so, not that those things shouldn't be mentioned, But for me, what's really interesting is looking at some moments that really got you there, or put you on a journey, or enabled you to, that just took you on a path that was different. And so being able to sort of focus some on those moments is fascinating to me. I mean, I just mentioned Smoltz, and I think because I just talked to him. I think we aired it this week or last week. And hearing him talk about, I know this is football, but just go with me for a second on baseball. The first guy ever with 300 wins and 150 saves. And, okay, so we can say, that, like, great job. But hearing him talk about finishing a season with, I think it was 54 saves. I'm not as prepped right now, but, over 50 saves. He said, I was so much more exhausted physically, mentally, finishing that than like when I was pitching 300 innings and had 20 wins or whatever. And so just talking, and I'd never heard him or anybody else sort of talk about that difference from a really real place. And so that, I appreciate you saying I'm good at it, but I love doing it. I find it so interesting, and then get to know, guys like you that I've been a fan of before, and we get to have a real conversation and hopefully have a couple of laughs, and that's it's really fun for me.
Well, I got a couple names for you here. Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg worked in a mortuary and was a phone sex operator before she became Whoopi Goldberg. Brad Pitt worked at El Pollo Loco, dressed as a chicken. You should probably get him on. Christopher Walken was a lion tamer. And then you're not going to believe what Channing Tatum was. He was actually a stripper, so that could be an interesting one.
Oh, really?
I just booked all your guests for this season.
Wow.
So, yeah, you
well done. I appreciate that.
Google.
All right, a little bit of Office backstory, two-parter. One, you go in to read for the part of Stanley.
Yeah.
Did you not get it because you weren't a middle-aged black man? And good, that was a joke. Good, everybody laughed. And number two,
there you go.
Do you know who else was up for the role of Kevin, and who obviously did not get it?
Yes. Do you know?
Well,
he's a prep guy.
I've done my research.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Well, well done. First off, on both parts. I was for the socioeconomic level that I was at the time. I was one of the first that had. This was TiVo back then, right? So this is before you could tape anything at any time for as much as you wanted. And I had that because I wanted to watch. I felt like if I have an audition and I don't know what's the style of the show, not just is it a comedy or drama, but like, is it like 2.5 Men, or is it like The Office, or like, so like, what is the sensibility? And if I don't know shows, so I spent a lot of time when I moved to Los Angeles just watching television. And I found this British show called The Office. Then I heard that The Office was happening here, and I went to my agent and manager at the time, and I said, "This is my show. This is it. I get this, the sensibility of this, and not only is this my show, but there's this character called Keith, who was the basis for this role of Kevin Malone. Well, so I got an audition for Stanley." And I knew that was not the role. Who, by the way, in the British version, he was not. To your part one of your question, he was not played by a middle-aged black man.
Okay,
he was a white bloke.
He was a white bloke. But I knew that was not it for me. So I went in and I read for Stanley, as I was instructed to do. But I read it as though I was Kevin, and it's just one of those gambles that now looking back, like, I don't even know how I had the balls to do it, if it was that preparation or whatever. But it worked out. I left the room and I was like, well, fuck, that was stupid. But then the casting director came running out and said, hey, we have this other role we want you to look at. And then after some time, the rest is history. But so when Steve Carrell left the show, to answer your part 2 of the question, was who else was up? The casting director, Allison Jones, unbelievable, legendary, tons of shows, Arrested Development, Curb Your Enthusiasm, The Office, blah, blah, blah.
You were in Arrested Development. I was all over your IMDb today.
I was a very small part.
But I like
again,
the dog
like
role
Allison
in
Jones.
CSI. That's my favorite role, is the dog role in CSI.
Do you know what that was?
No, I
Do you
just,
know-
I, no, I don't
Do you
watch
know what that
CSI.
was?
What was it?
I believe, my first network appearance. Dog Man. Dog Boy, Man and
Yeah,
Dog.
that's what they had you as, Dog
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, Dog Man. Do you know what that was? Do you know what that was?
What was
It was
it?
an episode of CSI, and I didn't even know what this was at the time. I wouldn't even consider myself sheltered. Do you know? It was
Furries?
about furries. Furries. Furbies?
Oh.
Furries. No, Furbies is the consumer craze from the early
Okay.
aughts.
Furries. Yes. Sexual gratification amongst people wearing mascot outfits, basically. Like, that was the deal.
Whatever floats your boat.
Hey, man. To each his own. Yeah.
So who was
I'm
going to
with
be
ya.
Kevin? Sorry about the furry sidebar.
So, oh God, I haven't thought about that in a long time. So Allison Jones came to me. Steve Carell was leaving, and we had a party. And she said, I was looking through all my old notes and all my old keepsakes to find something cool to give to him now that he's leaving about the audition process. She said, I didn't really find anything for him, but I found this for you. And she handed me this piece of paper, slightly yellowed, old piece of paper that was typed, and it said on it, Kevin Malone. And I don't remember the order, and I don't think it was by order, but it was 1, 2, 3. And it was me. It was Eric Stonestreet, who went on to play and win Emmys for Cam in Modern Family. He's done really well for himself. And the third name was Jorge Garcia from Lost and a bunch of other shows. The big guy on Lost and a bunch of other shows as well. So, the cool thing about that is, yeah, I know exactly who the last 3 were, and it kind of worked out for everybody, which I think is cool. In terms of our business anyway, and maybe it's the same, in football. I ended up going to this team or that team, but it all worked out.
So one question I had for you about the technical part of the show, which I think is so interesting, because as a guy who grew up hating laugh tracks, even as a child, they were...
Good for you.
That's a barrier to entry for me. Even today with Seinfeld, and that makes me very unpopular amongst a lot of my friends, but I am not a laugh track guy. How aware were you as a cast that you guys were doing something different, and how different was it at that point to omit the laugh track? And do you think it changed the game a little bit? Because Parks and Rec and all these other kind of the same kind of shows have stuck without it.
Well, no, it was a humongous deal. There had been some shows that had not had a laugh track before, but nothing mainstream network wise. So if you were to say what is and Ricky Gervais from the English, from the British version, brings up this show having a huge influence, but the Larry Sanders Show, which is an HBO comedy, which if you don't know it, it still holds up. It's really, really funny. With Gary Shandling and Jeffrey Tambor, who obviously went on to Arrested Development. But in terms of network, it was not happening at the time, and so we knew, and not just for our show, not just the lack of a laugh track, but also the way the show was shot, with the camera moving around, it being a little jiggly. Yeah. At the time, it was documentary, and that's what we were supposed to be, was like a documentary. So, all of those things fit in, but we knew it would be difficult. But I'll tell you, from the second episode we shot, which was this little episode called Diversity Day, mm-hmm. I knew then. I remember it just so clearly, sitting there, in between shots, and saying, if people give the show a chance, I don't know if they will or not, but we're doing something that's pretty unique and pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
and both in terms of the content, like that we were talking about and joking about race, which people say you can't do it today. You couldn't do it then either. I mean,
Right.
it had been, All in the Family was a show back that Archie Bunker was. The show dealt with race quite a bit, and then it had been like 20 some years, and no one you don't joke about that stuff,
Right? Yeah.
You don't joke about sexuality, you don't joke about sexual harassment, there are all these things you can't touch, and The Office did, and I just thankfully people gave it a chance, and now obviously it's as big as ever.
Well, with the comedy boundaries, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I think what makes The Office okay and good is that you're not celebrating the idiocy, if that's the word, of Michael Scott. You're like, this guy is not who you want to be.
Everyone's uncomfortable.
I constantly think about Michael Scott as a boss now, and I'm like I'm very aware. I'm cognizant of the fact that you can come across as an actual pig or an idiot, and you can be totally unaware of it. And so I think I come at it from the other angle. Is no, this stuff's good, and comedy's comedy. I still think there's room to push the boundaries, and so I'm not looking for a retort there, but I just do. I think when I look at it from that standpoint, it's actually a cautionary tale that we can enjoy watching at the same time. This is like everything you're not supposed to do.
Well, I don't know if you're researched or you're just real smart, but what you've just said is what I have said for a long time, which is
Not a research guy.
because people ask all the time, could this show happen today? And there have been some other actors who I think have been quoted not entirely accurately in terms of saying the show couldn't be done today or blah, blah, blah. But yeah, what you just said is a version of what I always say, which is, look, you have someone who says something that you quote unquote can't say. You have someone who says something inappropriate or misogynistic or slightly racist or whatever. But the show then shows 16 people's faces telling you can't say that thing. And so the idea that you can't say it is just really bizarre and confusing to me.
It's reinforced.
I don't understand.
It's reinforced. That, and let me take one more big swing here. If we're looking at what makes The Office great, I think what makes The Office great is this fundamental relatability to the fact, and I don't know if it's disappointment or horror, when you grow up and you realize that adults are just fucking children and everybody's crazy. And no matter what job you work at, whether it's this one, these guys lamenting things I do, or me going home and complaining about Macon and my wife or whatever.
Huh?
We're all, no, I haven't done that in 2 days. So it was a real estate deal.
Okay.
He's a real estate agent on the side.
Damn
Not
good
on the
one.
side, in the front.
Damn good one.
So I mean, I just feel like it's the relatability of holy shit, this is adulthood. This is a workplace.
Yeah.
I imagined so much more, and finding some humor in it. You
Right.
know, I think that's what makes it incredibly relatable to people, because when you read the plot of the show, which I went back to do to jog my memory, there are some unremarkable things in that plot where you're just like, how are they going to make this entertaining? It's the guys and the gals doing the show, hitting it out of the park. It's the ingenuity of the production of the show, but it's also the relatability. What makes The Office to you great? That's what me, the consumer, says. What are you saying?
Well, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, again, and I hate to say this, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think there's two other things that I would say. One is, around the time of Diversity Day, when I was sitting there going God, if people just gave this a chance, there was a factoid, which I don't remember the numbers, but you'll get my point, which is that we would talk about on set, can we hit enough people?
Yeah.
And the information was something like there are 200 million people in America who work in offices. So if 10%, if 5% of those people find it relatable to them, we'll be a hit. We'll stay on the air for a while. And that was what we talked about. What we didn't talk about, which is I think now why the show is what it is that the situation of a group of people managed by an unreasonable boss who put themselves in situations given their archetypes, that situation is not really about workplace. It's also really about school. And you have an unreasonable teacher who makes you do unreasonable things, gives you unreasonable assignments, behaves kind of weird, and you're with a group of people in a room that you're stuck with that you don't choose to be with those people as well. And so that sort of universality and relatability to that, I think, is why, which we were not, that was unintentional.
Yeah.
But I think that's why the show like went crazy again, and why, people are like, my 12-year-old, my 13-year-old, my 16-year-old, like all the time are watching it. From people who watched it, when it was on, they're now having kids who are watching it. To me, the sort of the astronomical rise of the show is due to I had a whole podcast based on this, and this was a discovery that I made. But the very last line of the show that was written by Greg Daniels, who was the creator, he wrote the last episode of the show. And Pam is clearly asked the question, last line of the show, is asked the question, why would people want to make a documentary about people who work at a paper company? And she says, there's beauty in ordinary things. Isn't that kind of the point? And so I think that what Greg did and what the creators did, not the actors did their part and the other writers or whatever, but that it's funny, that there's, crazy situations, that there are people who behave inappropriately and get judged for that or whatever. But ultimately, when you watch the show, when you watch 3 or 4 episodes in a row and you sort of put the sum total together, it's a celebration of ordinary people like me who are not on the cover of Cosmo. We don't go to Central Perk coffee shop in New York and live in an astronomically large apartment. We're ordinary people who are in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and sometimes we win one. And that's really fun and cool. And I think that spirit is what makes people watch it when they say it brings them comfort, when they say they watch it before bed because, they enjoy that feeling. I think that celebration of ordinary people with small victories is what the show is about.
That's so well put.
Yeah.
And parting thought, you made me think about my dad. We used to watch so much and say that's what she said so much as teenage and like college boys that when we come home for a dinner, my dad was tired of it. He was tired of the that's what she said. And so we had to devise a code word for that's what she said at the table, and it was bagel. so for years, and now Dad's in on the joke. And my dad will even offer up a bagel every once in a while, and I'll see the twinkle in his eye. Even he gets The Office fundamentally, and I think it's just amazing what you guys did. But you got to check out Brian's podcast, which of course is Off the Beat. I was on it a little while ago, a couple weeks back. Feels like a long time ago. It was before the Super Bowl. We hope to get Brian to Charlottesville for an SMU game. We hope to see him in an SEC game somewhere. But whatever you do, join us again. Okay, this has been a lot of fun, dude.
Absolutely. I really appreciate both the research and the non-research that happens on Greenlight, and
we got it all.
I will be. Yes, of course I'll come back. We'll talk
Sick.
some football when there's more
it.
things that we can talk about.
Let's do it.
Saturday, November 3rd, 2024. SMU at Virginia.
That's the bowl of the Vineyard
November
Vines belts.
3rd.
23rd, the Saturday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, the Saturday, right before my birthday.
Oh,
That's the I'll sue you bowl. That's the do you know what my dad does for a living bowl? That's the
Chris will put you up in the guest house.
Yeah, I got a nice guest house for you, buddy.
Really?
Yeah, it's a package trip, dude.
Here's the thing. can I have the main house and you sleep in the guest house?
Hey, no problem, because I love sleeping in the guest house, dude. I actually built an office that's not attached to the house. I consider it my house. I think I spend more time in there than I do in my house. My kids want to see me, they got to come up to the office. So you get the lay of the land, whatever you want, buddy. But
right.
appreciate the time.
Thanks
man.
guys.